You're at your desk. It's Thursday afternoon. Your paycheck just hit your account. For about 45 minutes, you feel okay. There's money there. Real money. Maybe $2,500, maybe $3,500, depending on your job. And for those 45 minutes, you tell yourself that this is the month. This is finally the month where you stop living paycheck to paycheck. This is the month you actually build something. You open your notes app. You do the math. You've been working for 8 years. 8 years. And you still don't have $100,000 to your name. Not in savings, not in investments, not anywhere. You're making decent money. You're not broke. You're not struggling like you used to. But somehow, between the rent, the car payment, the subscriptions you forgot about, the nights out with friends, the one-time purchases that somehow happen twice a week, the money just disappears. And not in a dramatic way. There's no villain. You didn't lose it in a bad investment. You didn't get scammed. It just evaporates, like it was never there at all. And the worst part, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. You've watched the videos. You know you should save 20% of your income. You know you should invest in index funds. You know you should cut unnecessary spending. But knowing and doing are two completely different things. So you sit there, Thursday afternoon, staring at your bank account, and you ask yourself the question that keeps you up at night. Why am I not at 100K yet? The thing is, when you ask, what's holding me back from 100K, you usually assume the answer is discipline. You think you're not saving enough, spending too much on coffee or Netflix or eating out, or if you just had more willpower, more determination, more hustle, you'd hit that number. So you blame yourselves. You feel broken, weak. You feel like everyone else figured it out except you. But here's what I want you to understand right now. It's not you. It's not willpower. It's not discipline. And it's definitely not a character flaw. What's actually holding you back from 100K isn't a personal failure. It's a mathematical trap, a structural problem in how you think about money, how you earn money, and how the system is designed to keep your money moving everywhere except toward a 100K goal. Most people hit 100K in their mid-40s, if they ever hit it at all. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because nobody ever showed them the actual equation. Nobody explained why your brain is literally working against you. Nobody told them that the way they're currently thinking about money almost guarantees they'll never reach that number. And that's what we're fixing today. Not your willpower, not your discipline, the actual invisible mechanics that are stealing your 100K. So what is this video actually about? I'm not going to tell you to cut your coffee. I'm not going to tell you that if you just grind harder, hustle more, work overtime, you'll magically hit 100K. That's the advice that doesn't work. That's the advice that makes you feel worse because you're already grinding, you're already working, and it's still not happening. What I'm going to do instead is show you the invisible equation that's running in the background of your financial life, the one that nobody talks about, the one that determines whether you'll ever reach 100K or stay stuck on the hamster wheel forever. I'm going to show you why time alone isn't enough, why earning more money doesn't automatically solve the problem, why you can make $60,000 a year and never hit 100K, or you could make $100,000 a year and still be broke. It's not about the income, it's about the equation. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why you're stuck, not so you feel worse, but so you can finally see the trap and stop walking into it every single month. Understanding the problem is the only way to solve it, and right now, you're solving the wrong problem. So let's fix that.
By the way, my name is Finn. I've spent too much time studying why some people hit 100K and others never do. It's not random. It's not luck. It's pattern. If understanding these patterns helps you reach that 100K goal, hit subscribe. Now, let's talk about what's actually holding you back. Okay, so what you think the equation is, you think it looks like this. Make money, save some of it, invest it, wait 30 years, get rich. Simple. And if that's actually how it worked, you'd have your 100K by now. You'd have way more than 100K. But that's not how it works. That's the illusion. What's actually happening beneath the surface is different. You're making money, yes, but there's this invisible leak in the system, a leak that most people don't even realize exists until they're 45 years old and they finally look at their net worth and panic. The leak is this: every dollar you make is fighting against you. And I mean that literally. Think about it. You earn $3,500 a month. Great. You feel good. But before you ever see that money, taxes are taken out. You're not keeping $3,500. You're keeping maybe $2,800. Already you've lost $700. That's 20% of your income, gone before you even touch it. Then the money hits your account, and immediately your obligations start pulling from it. Rent is $1,200. That's 43% of what you're actually taking home. Car payment is $350. That's another 12.5%. Insurance is $150. Phone is $80. Subscriptions you forgot about are another $40. You haven't eaten yet. You haven't gone anywhere. You haven't lived yet. And you've already spent $1,820 of your $2,800. You have $980 left for the entire month, for food, for gas, for literally everything else. But here's where the trap gets you. Because you still have to eat, you still have to pay for gas to get to work, you still need to exist. So you spend that $980. And at the end of the month, you have $0. Again, always $0. And this is the trap that nobody talks about. You're not poor because you're bad with money. You're stuck because your obligations are consuming almost 100% of your income before you even get a chance to build toward 100K. You think the problem is that you need to cut your latte, but the real problem is that your baseline obligations, the things you already committed to, are eating your entire paycheck. That's the illusion. People think they're failing at saving. They're actually failing at a much bigger problem. They've locked themselves into a lifestyle that doesn't leave any room for wealth building. And the worst part? This trap is by design. Not by your design, by the system's design.
How exactly does this trap work? I'm going to use a real example because this is where theory becomes painful reality. Let's say you're 25 years old. You just got a decent job. You're making $50,000 a year. That's about $3,300 a month after taxes. You feel good. You're adulting. You deserve to celebrate, right? So you do what everyone does. You move out of your parents' house or your roommate situation. You get your own apartment. It's nice. It's $1,200 a month. Then you realize you need a car to get to work. You can't take the bus forever. So you finance a car. It's $350 a month. Insurance is $120. Gas is $150. That's $620 a month just to move your body from point A to point B. You've now committed to $1,820 a month before you've bought a single piece of food. But you're not done. You need furniture. Your apartment is empty. So you go to a rent-to-own place or you put it on a credit card. You get a couch, a bed, a table, small payments, maybe $200 a month. You barely notice it. Phone bill, $80. Internet, $60. Electricity and water, $100. Groceries, $400. You're up to $2,660 now, and you're still living a pretty basic life. No eating out, no entertainment, just existing. You have $640 left over. $640 for everything else. An unexpected doctor visit? $200. Your car need an oil change? $60. A friend's birthday and you want to actually show up with a gift instead of showing up empty-handed? $50. Boom, you're broke again. And here's the insidious part. You're not actually living a luxurious life. You're not shopping at designer stores. You're not taking vacations. You're just existing. You're paying for the basic infrastructure of adult life, and it's consuming 80% of your income. So you tell yourself, I'll save next month. But next month is the same equation. Same rent, same car payment, same obligations, same $0 left over. And this is the moment where most people make a critical mistake. They think the solution is to make more money, so they hustle. They get a side gig, they work weekends, they make an extra $500 a month. They feel like they're finally going to break through. But here's what happens. That extra $500 doesn't go to savings, it goes to lifestyle creep. Your friend invites you to a concert. You say yes because now you can afford it. You buy better groceries because you're tired of ramen. You upgrade your phone because the old one is slow. You get a gym membership because you're going to finally get healthy. Before you know it, that extra $500 is gone, and your obligation level is even higher than before. This is the real trap. It's not that you make too little, it's that your obligations expand to match your income. And as long as your obligations are 80 to 90% of your income, you will never reach 100K. You'll never even reach 10K in savings. Because 100K isn't built in months, it's built in years. It's built by having surplus, margin, breathing room. And right now, you don't have any of that. Your paycheck is already spoken for before it even arrives.
So the question that's probably running through your head right now is, okay, so I'm trapped in obligations. But everyone has obligations. Everyone has rent, everyone has a car payment, everyone has to eat. So how does anyone actually reach 100K? How does anyone escape this? And that's the right question. That's the question that separates the people who break through from the people who stay stuck forever. Because most people look at their obligations and they think they're fixed. They think rent is just something that happens to them. They think a car payment is inevitable. They think these are unchangeable facts of life like gravity or death. But they're not. And here's where it gets interesting. Because the people who actually reach 100K, the people who actually build wealth, they don't make dramatically more money than you. They don't have some secret hack. They don't win the lottery. They do something that seems almost absurdly simple, but it's the opposite of what everyone else is doing. They don't try to save more. They don't try to earn more. They do something much more radical. They restructure their obligations. And I don't mean they cut their coffee. I don't mean they penny pinch or live like a hermit. I mean they make deliberate decisions about where their money goes that most people never even consider. But before I show you exactly how to do that, I need you to understand something deeper, something that explains why you're stuck, why your friends are stuck, and why most people never reach 100K no matter how hard they work. It's not just about the math. It's about how your brain is literally sabotaging you without you even realizing it.
Okay, so here's something most people don't realize. Your brain is not optimized for long-term wealth building. It's optimized for immediate survival and short-term comfort. And this was useful like 50,000 years ago when you needed to decide whether to eat the food in front of you or save it for later. Your ancestors who chose immediate eating survived more often than the ones who waited. So your brain got really good at choosing the dopamine hit now over the abstract reward later. But in 2026, that same brain is working against you. What happens? You get paid. Your brain experiences a dopamine spike. Money, survival. You feel safe for about 45 minutes, but then your brain immediately starts looking for ways to spend that money. Not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline, but because your brain literally doesn't care about 100K in 7 years. Your brain cares about how you feel right now, in this moment. So when you see something you want, a meal that looks good, a shirt that fits perfectly, a night out with friends, your brain doesn't do the math. Your brain doesn't think, if I skip this $40 dinner, I'm $1 closer to 100K. Your brain thinks, I deserve this. I've been working hard. I should feel good right now. And you know what? Your brain isn't wrong. You have been working hard. You do deserve to feel good. But here's the trap. Your brain doesn't understand delayed gratification at scale. It understands now versus later, and it will always choose now. But there's something deeper than even that, something that explains why even when you try to save, even when you have the best intentions, you still end up at $0 at the end of the month. It's called present bias, and it's a cognitive bias that makes your brain systematically undervalue the future and overvalue the present. How does it work in real life? Let's say you get your paycheck. You tell yourself, I'm going to save $500 this month. I'm serious this time. You feel good about that decision. You're being responsible. You're on your way to 100K. But then Wednesday comes, and you're tired, and your friend texts, and there's a new restaurant everyone's talking about, and your brain goes, but saving $500, that's so abstract. It's so far away. I might not even be alive in 50 years. But this dinner is real. It's happening right now, and I'm hungry. So you spend $60 on dinner. You still have $440 to save, you tell yourself. You're still fine. But then Friday comes, and the same thing happens. Concert tickets, $80. New shoes, $120. By Sunday, you've spent $300. You still tell yourself you'll save $200. You're still on track. But then Monday comes, your car makes a weird noise. You take it to a mechanic, $150. Tuesday, your mom calls and says she's struggling with rent. You send her $200 because what else are you going to do? Wednesday, you realize you're completely out of groceries and you're tired, and you just go to a restaurant instead of cooking. And by Friday, when you look at your account, you've saved $0 again. And you feel broken. You feel like you failed. You feel like you lack willpower. But the truth is, you didn't fail. Your brain just did exactly what it evolved to do. It prioritized the present over an abstract future goal. This is why willpower doesn't work. This is why discipline doesn't work. This is why telling yourself to just save more doesn't work. Because you're trying to use willpower to fight something way more powerful, your own neurology. And the people who actually reach 100K, they don't fight their brains. They restructure the system so their brain doesn't have to fight itself. They make it automatic. They make it invisible. They make the decision once, and then they remove themselves from the equation.
Okay, so now I want to zoom out and show you something that will change how you think about wealth forever. There's a massive structural difference between people who reach 100K and people who don't. And it's not what you think. It's not that wealthy people have more discipline. It's not that they care more about money. It's not even that they make more money necessarily. The difference is this. Wealthy people have restructured their financial system so that building wealth is the path of least resistance. What I mean by this, let me show you. When you're making $50,000 a year and 80% of your income is locked into obligations, you're in what I call the active fight mode. Every single day is a decision. Every single dollar is a choice. Should I spend it or save it? Do I deserve this or not? Will I have enough later? It's exhausting, and your brain wasn't designed to make that many decisions. By the end of the day, you're decision fatigued and your willpower is gone. So you spend money, not because you're irresponsible, but because making another decision, the decision to not spend, requires energy you don't have. This is what wealthy people do differently. They automate their savings before they ever see the money. Let's say a wealthy person makes $80,000 a year. On day one of their job, they set up automatic transfers. $500 goes directly from their paycheck to a separate savings account before they ever see it. Automatically. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to decide. It just happens. So the key point is, their brain adapts to this new income level. They adjust their spending to $79,500. They don't miss the $500 because they never had it in the first place. It's invisible. And because it's invisible, they're not fighting their present bias every single day. They're not wrestling with the decision. They're just living their life. And meanwhile, in the background, $500 a month is building. That's $6,000 a year. That's $60,000 in a decade. But the person making $50,000, they're trying to manually save from the remainder after all their obligations. They're fighting their brain every single day. Even if they manage to save $200 a month, which is way harder than it sounds, that's only $2,400 a year. That's $24,000 in a decade. Same time frame, different systems. One person reaches 100K, the other person has $24,000 and a lot of regret. The thing that really messes with people is the wealthy person isn't saving a higher percentage of their income. They're just using a system that makes saving automatic instead of optional.
But there's something even deeper happening here that I want you to understand, because this is where it gets unfair. When you have obligations consuming 80% of your income, every single thing in your life feels expensive. You can't afford to go out. You can't afford to travel. You can't afford to take a break. You're stressed all the time. Your relationships suffer. Your health suffers. You age faster because you're carrying constant low-level financial anxiety. And because you're stressed, you make worse decisions. You eat worse food because fast food is easier than cooking when you're exhausted. You spend more on convenience because your time feels more valuable than your money. You're trapped in a doom loop where being poor makes you poorer. But when you have obligations consuming only 60% of your income, suddenly life feels different. You can say no to a bad job without panicking. You can take a day off without worrying. You can invest in your health. You can invest in your skills. You can take a calculated risk. And because you're not stressed, you make better decisions. You cook more. You plan ahead. You negotiate better. You're trapped in an upward loop where having money makes you make better decisions that generate more money. This is why the system is rigged, not against you specifically, but in favor of people who got their obligations low early on. Maybe they were born into money. Maybe they made smart choices young. Maybe they got lucky. But now they're living in a different game than you. And the unfair part? Most people never realize this. They think wealthy people are just smarter or more disciplined. They don't realize that wealthy people are playing a completely different game with a completely different set of rules. But the thing here is, you can change your game too. You don't have to stay at 80% of your obligations. You don't have to fight your brain every single day. You can restructure your system. And once you understand this, once you see that the problem isn't you, it's the system you're trapped in, everything changes.
Okay, so I want to give this a name, because once you can name something, you can see it. And once you can see it, you can fix it. I call it the obligation gap. The obligation gap is the difference between what you earn and what you've committed to spend, and it determines whether you'll ever build wealth or stay stuck forever. Let me break this down so it's crystal clear. Your income minus your obligations equals your obligation gap. That's your surplus. That's your breathing room. That's the only money that can actually go toward building 100K. So let's use real numbers again. Person A makes $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month after taxes, has $4,000 in monthly obligations, rent, car, insurance, food, utilities, subscriptions. Obligation gap equals $1,000 per month. Person B makes $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month after taxes, has $4,500 in monthly obligations. Obligation gap equals $500 per month. Same income. Person A reaches 100K in about 8 to 10 years if they invest their gap. Person B takes 16 to 20 years. Same job, same salary. Different game. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Person C makes $80,000 a year, $6,400 a month after taxes, has $5,500 in monthly obligations. Obligation gap equals $900 per month. Person C makes $20,000 more per year than Person A, but their obligation gap is actually smaller. Why? Because they bought a house when it was expensive, because they financed a fancy car, because they upgraded their lifestyle the moment they got the raise. Person C will take longer to reach 100K than Person A, even though they make more money. Why? Because of the obligation gap. This is the framework that changes everything, because now you can see it. It's not abstract anymore. It's not save more money. It's specific. What is my current obligation gap, and what would happen if I shrunk it? The wealthy people I mentioned earlier, they have huge obligation gaps. Some of them have obligation gaps of $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 per month, not because they make that much more, but because they've strategically kept their obligations low. They drive a used car instead of financing a new one they can't afford. They rent an apartment instead of buying a house they can't afford. They eat at home instead of going out, not because they're cheap, but because they understand the obligation gap framework. And the moment you understand this, you can make a decision. Am I going to keep my obligations where they are, or am I going to shrink my obligation gap so I can actually build toward 100K? That's the choice. That's the only choice that actually matters.
So right now, I want to show you something that explains why most people never reach 100K. It's because they're measuring success by the wrong metric. The old metric, what everyone is doing. Success equals how much money you make. So people focus on this. They get a raise from 50K to 60K. They feel successful. They've won. And what do? They celebrate. They upgrade their apartment. They get a nicer car. They eat out more. They join a gym. They buy new clothes. Their income went up $10,000, but their obligations went up $9,500. Their obligation gap actually shrunk. They're further away from 100K than they were before the raise. But they feel successful because they're measuring by the wrong metric. The new metric, what actually builds wealth. Success equals how much surplus you have left after obligations. This changes everything. Now, a raise doesn't feel like permission to upgrade your life. A raise feels like an opportunity to expand your obligation gap. You make 60K instead of 50K? Amazing! Now you can automate $500 a month into savings instead of $300. Your obligation gap just grew. Someone offers you a promotion that requires you to move to a more expensive city. You calculate the new rent, the new cost of living, the new obligations. If your obligation gap shrinks, you don't take it, no matter how prestigious the job is. You're measuring by the right metric now. Your friend invites you to go in on a beach house and split the mortgage. You do the math. Does this shrink or expand your obligation gap? If it shrinks, you do it. If it expands, you say no. Same decision framework. See the difference? You're not restricting yourself. You're not living like a monk. You're just measuring by a different metric. And this metric tells the truth. Because the truth is this: you don't get to 100K by making more money. You get to 100K by creating and protecting your obligation gap. Most people have this backwards. They think if they just earn more, everything will work out. They'll make 100K a year and they'll finally feel rich. But if you're someone who has a small obligation gap at 60K, you'll still have a small obligation gap at 100K. You just won't feel it as much because the numbers are bigger, but the ratio stays the same. You'll still be trapped in the active fight mode. You'll still be fighting your brain every single day. But if you've built a large obligation gap at 60K, when you make 100K, that obligation gap becomes massive. Now you're building wealth automatically. Now you're living in the upward loop. Now you're on your way to 100K in assets, not just 100K in salary. So here's the shift you need to make in your thinking. Stop asking, how can I make more money? Start asking, how can I shrink my obligations? Because one question keeps you on the hamster wheel. The other question is the only one that actually leads to 100K.
So now I'm going to give you some questions. Not instructions, not things you have to do, but questions that will actually see your own obligation gap and understand what needs to change. And here the thing about these questions is, they only work if you're honest with yourself. Not honest in a way that makes you feel good, but honest in a way that tells the truth. What are your actual monthly obligations? Not the ones you think you have, not the ones that sound reasonable, but the actual ones. Write them down. Rent or mortgage, car payment, insurance, phone, internet, subscriptions, food, utilities. Everything you've committed to pay every single month, whether you feel like it or not. Add them up. What's the number? How close is it to your monthly take-home income? Which of these obligations are actually non-negotiable? This is where people get defensive. They say, I need my apartment, I need my car, I need food. Yes, you do, But do you need a $1,200 apartment, or would a $900 apartment work? Do you need a car payment, or would a $3,000 used car work? Do you need to eat out, or would home cooking work? Go through each obligation. Which ones are actually locked in, and which ones are you choosing because they feel comfortable or normal? If you had to shrink your obligations by 20%, what would go first? This question reveals what's actually important to you versus what you're just doing because everyone else is doing it. If you had to cut $1,000 a month from your obligations, what would you cut? A fancy apartment? The car payment? The subscriptions? The eating out budget? Whatever you'd cut last is what matters. That's your real priority. Everything else is just noise. What would your obligation gap be if you made that cut? And this is where you see the math. If you're at $5,000 income and $4,500 obligations, your gap is $500. But if you cut that $1,000 apartment and moved somewhere cheaper, your new gap would be $1,500. That's $18,000 a year. That's $180,000 in 10 years if you invested it at a modest 8% return. One decision, one apartment, $180,000 difference. What would your life actually look like if you lived with a bigger obligation gap? And I mean really think about this, not in a restrictive way, in a freedom way. If you had $1,500 a month surplus instead of $500, what would change? You could take time off without panicking. You could say no to a job that was making you miserable. You could learn a new skill. You could travel. You could rest. What would that feel like? How much longer are you willing to wait to reach 100K? This is the hard one, because every year you wait, every year you keep your obligations where they are, you're adding years to your timeline. If you're currently on track to reach 100K in 20 years, but you could restructure and reach it in 8 years, what's holding you back from making that change? Is it comfortable? Is it what other people think? Is it fear? Is it not believing you can actually do it? Whatever the answer is, that's the real obstacle. And until you identify it, until you name it, you won't move. What's one obligation you could shrink in the next 30 days? Not eliminate, shrink. Could you move to a slightly cheaper apartment? Could you sell your car and buy a used one? Could you cancel 3 subscriptions you're not using? Could you commit to cooking at home 5 days a week instead of going out? What's one thing you could do in the next month that would shrink your obligations and expand your gap? Because here's the truth. You already know what needs to happen. You don't need me to tell you. You need to actually do something about it. And the only way you do something is by starting small. One obligation, one decision, 1 month. That's how you break the cycle.
So here is where we land. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not lacking discipline. You've just been playing a game with rules you didn't know existed. And those rules have been working against you for years. But now you know the rules. Now you can see the obligation gap. Now you understand that building 100K isn't about making more money or working harder or having more willpower. It's about restructuring your system so that building wealth is what naturally happens when you live your life. And here is the thing about that. Once you understand it, you can't unknow it. You're going to walk past an apartment listing, and instead of thinking, that looks nice, you're going to think, what would my obligation gap be? You're going to see a car commercial, and instead of wanting it, you're going to do the math. You're going to get offered a job with a fancy title and more money, and you're going to calculate whether it expands or shrinks your gap. You're going to see the game for what it is. And that's the first step. Not the only step, but the first one. The second step is small. It's not dramatic. It's not some big life overhaul where you move into your parents' basement or eat nothing but rice and beans. It's one decision. One obligation you decide to shrink. 1 month where you live differently. You're going to survive it.
you're going to realize that the thing you thought you needed, the thing that felt non-negotiable, actually wasn't. And you're going to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. You're going to feel margin, breathing room, space. Even if it's just $200 extra at the end of the month, it's going to feel like freedom. And that's when things shift. Because now, you're not fighting your brain anymore. Now, your brain is on your side. Because you actually have money left over. You actually have options. You actually have choices. You don't have to go out to eat. You want to, but you don't have to. And that distinction changes everything. That's when you start investing automatically. That's when $500 a month goes into an index fund without you having to think about it. That's when you start building toward $100K, not because you're disciplined, but because your system makes it inevitable. And the beautiful part is, you don't have to wait 20 years for this to happen. You don't have to sacrifice your entire life. You just have to make one decision differently. The person making $50,000 with a $500 obligation gap will reach $100K before the person making $100,000 with a $4,500 obligation gap. Every time, without exception. That's not motivational. That's just math. And the math works for you if you're willing to see the game clearly. So when you're sitting at your desk on Thursday afternoon, watching your paycheck hit your account, you can finally tell yourself something different. Not, how am I going to make this work? Not, why don't I have enough? Not, maybe next month. You can tell yourself, I see the gap. I understand the game. And I'm going to make one decision this month that moves me closer to 100K. That's all you need. One decision, 1 month. That's how you go from stuck to unstoppable. The 100K is waiting for you. You just have to stop playing the old game and start playing the new one.